Hi everybody, welcome to Line of the Week number 160, Motif Development Using Melodic Rhythms. It's time again to take another rhythm, add notes to it, and then improvise with it over tunes. This is called motif development. This week's motif incorporates the main idea of 6 consecutive eighth notes, and then we're primarily going to use 3 motif development tools. First, variation, second, rhythmic displacement, and third, sequence. Let's review some of the common tools improvisers use to develop motifs. You've got the option of playing an original motif, meaning take a melodic rhythm and add notes to it. You can play a variation, which means same notes, different rhythm, or same rhythm, different notes. You can play an extension, meaning adding new material immediately before or after to either the original motif or a fragment of the original motif. You can use fragmentation using a part of the motif, rhythmic displacement, starting the motif on a different beat, augmentation, making the time values longer, diminution, making the time values shorter, and sequence, the repetition of rhythm and or melody or melodic curve. For an in-depth explanation of these ideas, check out Hal Crook's book, How to Improvise. Before I get to the line of the week, and so we're all on the same page, here are the chords to the progression. This week's line is over a simple 12-bar B-flat blues form. The chords are B-flat 7 to E-flat 7 to B-flat 7 for 2 measures, to E-flat 7 for 2 measures, back to B-flat 7 for 2 measures, then F7, then E-flat 7, B-flat 7, F7. In addition to standard notation, tab, chords, and chord scales, I also include hammer-ons, pull-offs, left-hand fingering, and right-hand fingering. I include left-hand fingering, which I modified from Tim Miller's 2-1-2 approach. I include right-hand fingering in case you're interested in the finger-style approach that I use. Here are the chord scales I'm using for this week's line. The chord scales I use don't have any non-harmonic tones. They're made of chord tones and allowable tensions. So in summary, I go from chord sound to chord sound, resolving tension by half step at the point of chord change. But that's just how I improvise, and there are literally millions of other types of vocabulary you may probably prefer and can develop on your own. For me, it's also important to add plenty of space, what Hal Crook calls the play-rest approach. I mention Hal Crook frequently. He was a teacher of mine back in the day at Berkeley. Regarding the book that I quote from, I have permission from the publisher, and there's no financial arrangement whatsoever. The chord scales are F melodic minor, or in the first measure you could play a D-flat pentatonic, or you could play a B-flat blues, for example. Next measure over the E-flat 7, you could use notes from the B-flat melodic minor scale. Then F melodic minor for 2 measures, then B-flat melodic minor for 2 measures, then back to F melodic minor for 2 measures, G-flat melodic minor, B-flat melodic minor, F melodic minor, and then G-flat melodic minor. Here's the basic idea of 6 consecutive eighth notes rhythmically displaced by simply inserting an eighth note after each repetition of 6 consecutive eighth notes. Here's the line of the week with Guitar Pro backing I use to make sure I'm getting the notes and the rhythm accurate. In measure 1, you've got the original motif, meaning 6 consecutive eighth notes. In measure 2, there's a variation of the original motif. Measure 3, variation of the original motif with an eighth note extension at the end. Note that in measures 1 through 3, there's an easily identifiable sequence containing eighth notes and a downward melodic curve. In measure 4, there's a rest. In measure 5, variation and eighth note rhythmic displacement of the original motif. Measure 6, another variation and example of rhythmic displacement. Measure 7, another variation and example of rhythmic displacement. In measure 8, there's a rest. In measure 9, another variation. In measures 10 to 12, there's 3 sixth-note variations, each separated by eighth note rest to create a rhythmically displaced sound. So that's all for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.